They spent some time talking about a suggestion that was made that we consider a consultant review of Plan C safety. And the idea here is that with the concern about turning movements and intersection functionality with Plan C and the separated bike lanes, would it be advisable to bring in an outside consultant that is an expert in these things, that does this type of work on a regular basis, to do an assessment of our plan and let us know if they think it's viable and can be safely implemented. And so that was something that they seemed to like the concept of. They did not take any action with it. It's not part of the recommendation, but it is something that I think did meet with some favor. And ultimately at the end, after an hour and a half of gyrations on what to do, they went pretty simple and just recommended Plan C. Okay, so that is the Transportation Commission recommendation to Plan C. They did ask that we provide a good listing of pros and cons of each of the plans and the concepts, and that's what's in your packet this evening. So hopefully that captures the positives and the negatives of each of those. Okay, so to talk a little bit about what's in the specific plans, and then we'll talk a little bit about budget, and I'll wrap up. Okay, there are some elements that are common to all four plans. So these are things that regardless of which plan we would choose, if we choose any of these or even an alternative, these are the things that we would propose be included in any of them, right? So it's common to all of those, all of the plans. First off, speed limits. It was pretty unanimous, well frankly I think it was unanimous, everybody we spoke with, that the speed limit that currently is 25 on the west end and shifts to 30 miles per hour in the center section of the corridor from Van Buren over to Hayes, if I remember correctly, and then drops back to 25 miles an hour out to the east, be changed so that it's 25 miles an hour from Washington to Mountain View Road. So we drop that center section from 30 to 25. Same speed limit, the entire length. I hadn't run across anybody that had any issue with doing that. One of the concepts, again, common to all plans, is adding time-activated warning lights, so the kind of the bouncing ball light systems. I wouldn't necessarily say when flashing at this point, but it's just the added visual cue on the school speed zone signs. When we looked at traffic speeds, the one area we saw particularly we had problems was actually at the high school, where the speeds were quite a bit higher than they should have been, as the rest of the corridor fit the speed limit signs pretty well, but the high school had some issues. And so we felt that adding some additional lighting on those signs to raise awareness for the drivers that you're in a school zone would be beneficial. There are two of them, the high school and again at Lena Whitmore Elementary School. And we would suggest that these be done on a timer basis. So in the morning when school, just before school starts, for that period they would be on, they would turn off. Once school begins, they would start up again and run during lunch, and then off, and then come back again on the afternoon session when school's getting out for a period, and then turn off. One of the things that we've found, and you see a lot in the traffic industry, is if you leave something on constantly, pretty soon it's just background. You don't even see it anymore. And a lot of folks probably don't even see the blinking light that's above Adams Street right now, but it's there. The thing with this is if they come and go, they're more likely to catch your attention. So just an added influence. Again, all three plans. Raised pedestrian crossings. This is something that is truly a traffic calming measure. The American Public Works Association studies show that you can see anywhere from a 12 to 18% decrease in speeds due to these kind of devices. We're proposing 3 of them at these locations, the east side of the Adams Street intersection, the east side of Monroe Street, and the west side of the Cleveland intersection. And I'll show you those locations in just a second. They vary a little bit in width in terms of the top of these structures and the width of the crosswalk itself. So this is generally what they look like. This is the road section, sidewalk on either side, and there's a ramp that comes up. So the street elevation actually rises from the gutter up to the height of the top of the curb and matches the sidewalk to either side. Goes flat for a little while, either in our case 8 feet wide or 10 feet wide, and then ramps back down to normal elevation beyond that. A couple of things that this will do for you is this vertical element, this ramp, is not very comfortable if you take it too quickly. and the steepness of the ramp can affect that. So you set this up so that if you're going too fast, it's not, when your car hits it, it is not a comfortable feeling. And so that helps slow people down, which is the whole idea of traffic calming. It also, through some of the markings you'll see here in a second, improves overall visibility of the pedestrians, which is important in key locations where we'd use this. So just a couple quick pictures. You can see here where there's a ramp, there's a marked crossing at the top, ramp down the other side. This is the standard marking that you put on the ramp portion. So as you're approaching it as a driver, you see these white kind of chevron things facing you, as well as seeing the crosswalk that you're going to encounter. This is the view from the pedestrian's perspective, so there's a ramp coming up either side, and then it's just a straight shot at level grade across the street. As far as locations, plans A and B, actually all the plans, all the plans have them at Adams. This particular rendering is the same for A and B. So the east side of the intersection, this would be the crosswalk, 10 foot wide, ramp up, ramp down type of construction. In the Plan C version with the two-way separated bike lanes up here, this is how it would fit. It works just as well in any of the plans that we have proposed. Second location would be at the, I should back up and tell you, Adams, of course, the high school on the south, 1912 Center here. Very, very busy crosswalk. This is the southwest corner of East City Park at Monroe. Felt it would be a good location there as well. This particular drawing is from Plan B, which has some curb bulbs involved. Plan C, again, the bike lanes going through, works well. And the next location then is out at Cleveland. Now Cleveland is on the east side of Lena Whitmore, behind the kind of the park area and the playground. And there's a lot of kids that come up this way to come into the back of the school. So that was why they chose this third location as a spot for a raised pedestrian crossing. Okay, other common corridor components, intersection traffic control. Again, I think a fairly unanimous discussion about changing the traffic control at Hayes and Blaine Street intersections to four-way stop control. Now today, Hayes intersection, third stops, Hayes does not. At the Blaine intersection, same thing, third stops, and Blaine does not. These two intersections were seen as pretty important locations with high pedestrian traffic. Generally speaking, the Hayes intersection is likely to see fairly even vehicle load distributions coming from north-south versus east-west. Four-way stops work well in those situations, but it's also another method for improving overall pedestrian safety at those particularly busy intersections. Blaine, of course, is just south of Lena Whitmore, lots of elementary school kids going through there, so we felt that was a good place to put some emphasis on managing traffic and traffic speeds. Center medians, both ends, 5 foot wide to 9, actually even to 10 foot wide, now optioned for a median on the west end. That says the Washington Street. We didn't get that fixed. That's the Jefferson Street intersection. And then one near Mountain View Road. Just some quick shots. This would be the 5 foot type median located just east of the Jefferson Street intersection with the crosswalk cutting through it. And some realignment through here. A wider version, which does require removing some parking on the north side, but it gives you a much wider median. Creates a pedestrian refuge, enough width here that a pedestrian can come out on the crosswalk and be here waiting for a vehicle to see them and stop, and they're out of traffic, so there's some protection there. The wider one, either of them really, but the wider one even gives us more options to create kind of that entryway into this residential and institutional neighborhood as you're coming out of the downtown's business district. So as you're heading eastbound, this is a kind of a statement, if you will, of, hey, you're transitioning from the downtown commercial busy to something different. So pay some attention here as a driver. A couple examples. This happens to be one out on D Street we did a couple years ago in front of the middle school. This one's pretty narrow, but you can see a crosswalk kind of cutting through the middle of it. So that's the idea, is that there would be some kind of a center median, probably a little bit wider than this. Another one at the University of Idaho by the bookstore. Theirs is pretty long. It has two crosswalks that cut through it. And again, some kind of treatments at the beginning to help folks notice that it is there. The final common component is sidewalks. There's a desire to make sure we have complete sidewalks throughout the corridor, really running from Mountain View all the way down to downtown Main Street. There are some gaps in that system, and so the proposals would fill those gaps in all 4 of the plans. So what you see here in the red is the areas where we currently do not have sidewalks, and we would propose to construct them. The actual location with relation to the curb will vary, depends on what's out there. We work with property owners adjacent to these locations in terms of things like landscaping and trees and other features that they might have to try to fit them in where they're going to be the least disruptive for them, but also meet our needs. So a section there just west of Garfield, and then some gaps here and to the west of Grant on the south side, and then continuing from Grant all the way over to Cleveland, a little gap on the north side as well, Cleveland to Roosevelt, and Roosevelt over towards Mountain View. Of course, the area of the creek doesn't have sidewalk at all on either side at this point.